So this, for lack of a better title, is called Differences. Her heartbeat was the only song she knew, and she couldn't control the volume. And on nights where it got really bad, she wished she could turn it off. She was always looking for explanations, curious eyes searching, but she didn't know what she was looking for, so she loved herself a little bit less. She kept a subway map in her back pocket. It was torn at the edges and dated 2009, but it had an old poem on it in secret code, and she was looking to decipher it. She found her subway map on the edge of the platform, the yellow strip that pretty much screamed warning, screamed warning, screamed warning, and she muted it with her foot. And her heartbeat played louder than the loudspeaker in the train station. She didn't hear the robotic please. Step away from the platform edge. She held the subway map in her hands. She felt freedom or emptiness. She didn't know the difference. Underneath her toes as they hung off of the platform, and she saw the train coming, wheels screeching against the tracks, and she felt herself falling or jumping. She didn't know the difference. And she blinked, but her eyes wouldn't open again. And she felt herself moving forward, and the wind from the train blew against her face, and she vaguely heard screams and the train horn over her heartbeat. She felt herself jerk backward, being pulled by a force stronger than her own will. Her eyes opened, and she saw him, and his smile, and felt it warm the icicles of her hands, and she loved herself a little bit more. Her heartbeat was the only song she knew, and she couldn't control the volume. And on nights where it got really bad, she wished she could turn it off. She saw him, and the song of her heartbeat stopped. Her eyes were wide, and she felt questions rising and dancing through her stomach like butterflies or nausea. She didn't know the difference, and the train opened its doors, and he was gone. And the train closed its doors, and she was alone again, and the song continued playing, and she loved herself a little bit less. She never noticed the hidden route on her subway map. She was too busy running through the maze of her own ignorance to notice. She was busy noticing how her hands looked when held against the sun, how her hands looked when held underwater for too long. Oh, just kidding. How her hands looked all alone. She was told she had man hands. So she spent hours at a time washing them and scrubbing them of their manliness. She brought lotions like aromas, like places she only visited in her dreams. She was told she had man hands, and she loved herself a little bit less. She picked dandelions or ripped them from their home. She didn't know the difference. She blew her hopes and dreams into the dandelions, which would be carried into the wind. She blew her heart into a flower that she thought was beautiful. She weaved crowns out of them because they were delicate and they understood. She forgot that dandelions are weeds too. When she found out, she loved them a little bit less because no one is supposed to love a pest. She pressed a dandelion into her subway map and felt it die, but she wouldn't throw it out. She told herself it was a promise. She asked what the promise was, and she couldn't give herself an answer, so she loved herself a little bit less. On the subway, she took her map out of her pocket. It was torn and soggy because it had rained a little too hard, and she didn't have an umbrella because her tears were far worse than the rain could ever be. She unfolded her map and tried to unfold the poem in code, and she didn't notice her dandelion fall out. She felt a tap on her shoulder, and she turned and saw him twirling the dandelion between his fingers. He had dainty little woman hands and a natural blush in his cheeks and an apology in his throat, and he loved himself a little bit less. Her heartbeat was the only song she knew, but his voice rang true in her ears. It was the music she never listened to and the love song she never knew she needed to have. And they talked for what seemed like hours but felt like seconds, and her heart was warmer than the icicles of her hands. She forgot she had man hands and that she was supposed to be ashamed. She took her hands out of her pockets and he held them, and she was alive or happy. She didn't know the difference. Her heartbeat was the only song she knew, and she couldn't control the volume, and on nights where it got really bad, she wished she could turn it off. He listened to her heartbeat, and he added a melody to her tempo. He gave happy lyrics to the sad song she was living, and they loved each other a little bit more. Thank you.